go for it.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at this early hour. I'm Dominika Walec, and I'm the president of the OMGKRK community, and I'd love to, welcome you to this 7th edition of the Virtual Funders Breakfast, which is a chance for us to invite leading entrepreneurs from our community to share their experiences, and also exchange the knowledge about how they are struggling with the current situation around pandemic and other challenges and opportunities that they notice these days. So we organize those once per month, and the foundation is a host of those events. So to those of you that are not familiar with our activities, I would like to tell you a bit more about the foundation supporting #OMG, because this is the organization that is facilitating the growth of our startup ecosystem in Krakow, and facilitating the connections between other communities and making sure that the world hears about our achievements. So on the one hand, we promote what we have here in-house and try to spread the word about your achievements. And on the other hand, we try to support the matchmaking between founders and also, other community members like corporates, investors, and also talent, because we know that this is one of the topics that you are challenging the most, to find the right talent for your business. So we also help with this type of matchmaking, and we also organize the events like today's to support the exchange of knowledge, good practices, and give you a floor to discuss, so that you are not alone in running your business, but you can also take the insights from other founders in our community. And because our mission is also to educate other founders, we focus on the early stage. We have our own accelerator programs in which I hopefully you one day will be also involved to help those early stage companies to grow. So today I'm very glad when we are talking about the education, we actually have the best expert in town joining us today. So Michał, Borkowski, thank you again for accepting our invitation to this virtual funders breakfast. And you're as guru in terms of educational market. So I hope you will share some really nice insights with us. I know that you don't like the presentation mode, so we agreed that it will be like just a Q&A session where we could discuss some of your insights. But it would be great if you could start with a very brief introduction about Brainly, because we, as Paul mentioned, we have a lot of international members of our network also with us today. So it will be great to learn a bit more about Brainly first, and then, tell us a bit more about your playbook, because you are one of the most successful, if not the most successful company in Krakow these days. So tell us some of the initial insights, and then I will try to dig more.
Sure, happy to, and thank you for the invitation. Speaking about Brain, Brain is an online learning community for middle, high school, and college level students, plus parents of the younger kids. And the way it works is that whenever a student gets stuck with homework or gets stuck with preparation to an exam, they can come to Brainy to get help with that, and that help comes with an answer, step-by-step explanation. Plus, we build an ecosystem of other features around that experience. When it comes to Brainy, the product started in 2009, and that was called Zadane in Poland. That at some point we rebranded. And what was really cool with Zadane was that every day when I've been building it, I felt I wish I had something like that when I was in high school. And in fact, that's the feeling that carries on up until today. And I totally see it carrying on further, because when I opened brand new website today morning, like it's exactly the same feeling that I have. So that helps to relate the product to myself, and it's kind of to myself from the past, but it still stays very very relevant. From the idea perspective, I think that's we have a huge problem that we are solving, and the problem is that every student in the world needs help in learning, and there is more than 1 billion students. But also what we realize is that their like parents also struggle whenever their kids struggle with learning. So in fact, that's opening up the potential target group to be even bigger.
So there's like 350 million already, and so like still a lot to go, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of room to grow, definitely. So yeah, like I think there are a couple of things that are unique about us. One is definitely that we have a very strong network effect because it's a content-based model, community and content-based. So whenever a student asks a question, we put that question into our knowledge base. When the question receives an answer, like it becomes valuable to the rest of students and parents, and that makes the product stronger. And the stronger the product gets, more people are coming. There's more engagement, more willingness to pay, and this is circle that makes it possible. And second thing is that we are growing with almost zero marketing spend. And I think that's, especially these days in online education, is very far from standard, because there is a lot of companies that are spending a lot of money on buying app installs on Facebook or on Google, and we don't have to do that. So I think that's a very clear competitive advantage that we have. From monetization model, it's a freemium model. So think a bit like Spotify. So there is a free version with a lot of value, but with limited access to content and limited access to features. And if you upgrade to Brainy Plus, then you get access to everything unlimited. We've launched that model in the US. So that's about 8% of our global audience. We are not monetizing yet the rest of our markets. Speaking about what Richard said before of monetization. But yeah, like we are, like I think doing quite well, and yeah, building all of this initially remotely, then out of Krakow, then expanding to a number of to 2 other offices around the world, and now back to full remote work. So kind of back to the roots from the early days, which is very, very exciting to me. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for regarding the introduction to Brain.
Yes, definitely. That was I was looking for. The one question, because that already spotted my biggest interest. Like you were speaking about building community as if that was like a very easy task to do, especially without money, as you mentioned. So can we stop a bit more here, and can you tell us how exactly that started? Because building the community of 350 million users, this is like a massive achievement. So but we all probably want to know like how this success started, and what are, let's say, step-by-step process to achieve that, especially if you're saying that there's no money involved. So, and whether this is really unique for you, or you believe that this is something that can be replicated in some other areas as well, because I believe our colleagues here from other markets would love to repeat similar experience.
Yeah, so I think there are 2 layers to that. There is that foundation, and then there is the playbook that we built on that foundation. So regarding the foundation, I think there are 3 elements to that. The number 1 is that we had a very clearly defined problem that we are solving. That is big, yeah. And I think spending time to figure this out and to have a clear statement around why you are here is very important to be able to build a community. Second thing is that we managed to have a great team, and that's always helping. In fact, it's necessary to do anything. And the third one is that we had this very clearly defined network effect from day 0. Yeah? And that also helps in building on top of it. you know, like from the process of building a community, I think we don't spend enough time like thinking about it, because it's kind of a DNA of the company. But you know, initially you need to attract the very first group of people who are going to come, and they need to see the value. And I remember in the early days when we were just starting in Poland, we created this content on our own to post it to the website and see and kind of create that, you know, that crowd that is not a real crowd, but that it feels like a crowd. But I think we were lucky because we stopped doing that on day one. After posting just like 30 or 40 pieces of content, we realized there is a lot of activity already going on. So students asking questions, students answering questions, and our actions moved more towards moderation, that I think is extremely important in any community, but specifically in the community that is directing teenagers. It's crazy important to make sure that on one hand the content that is shared is of high quality, but also that the community is safe and nothing bad is going to happen because of everything that you can see happening in the real world. Yeah. And that's kind of this phase two.
One question, like, so what were the initial materials that you have released? So like, were there like video recordings or some, you know, like specific materials, but with which you were promoting the service back then? And also like, what was the, let's say, paths? So have you started promoting from Poland or rather more like US market? Like what was the initial target market that you were looking into, and whether you were also adjusting some materials to those particular markets?
So in Poland in the early days, like at the very beginning, like we created content that was very relevant to the audience, and that was using the use case. Yeah. So this was Q&A content, so question around some homework and an answer plus step explanation to that question. And that's really the content that we've been using in the early days. We've been posting it to
now I understand why you like so much this Q&A session.
yeah, definitely. And you know, it was all in Polish because we were focused on building the Polish community. But the way we've been doing this is pretty much a clear like replication of the model that we developed in the early days. And we started replicating it in other countries. Like clearly over the years, we got better. We started fine tuning, and it just works at, I don't know, 1000x capacity of the way we worked on day one. But the core of it and the like idea behind it is exactly the same. I think that's the beauty of any playbook that you can create, because like you test it once, you define it. And then if that playbook is relatively easy to scale to other countries, like then you can build on top of it. And that helps to align everyone. And that's really the way I've seen the global businesses to be built. You know, like one use case in your home country, you understand every detail of it, and then you replicate it while making it significantly more efficient.
So how was your like Polish playbook working for other countries? Like, was it working right away, or you had to make some specific adjustments? And what was the main difference, if there were any?
Yeah, I just think that you know that we made so that changed over the time, because we started in Poland and then we went when we opened the Russian version of the product. Like we decided to do everything the same as we did in Poland, even including the actions that we felt were not successful, because we didn't have a good grasp of what did work. And what I think we learned is that you never know what is creating this, because you know you build and the line looks quite flat, and at some point there is that inflection point that makes it grow super fast. And we by definition said that everything that we are doing on this line that was quite flat was important to create this inflection point. So we replicated exactly the same thing in Russia when we entered that market. And only then, when we've seen like again that some things did work or didn't work, like we started fine tuning the model, because then we started in the rollout to other countries. I think the next were Turkey, Latin America, and Brazil. and that was really narrowed focus to what we thought did work. And yeah, so that was a constant improvement. That said, I think like also something that we didn't design like with a lot of knowledge, but what helps us is that the Brainy model is very open. Yeah? So it's not like we say, oh, you can only ask questions in math at this very specific level, and we plug into the local curriculum, and we have to do a ton of research on local curriculum. In fact, the model is very open, because what we need to do is just to put some school subjects out there, school levels, so a basic structure of the educational system, and then any question that can be asked can be just plugged into that framework. Yeah. Right now, we are going more deep into the local curriculums, and that requires a lot of localization. But that core of the model is very open. So no matter what education system, what are the principles, what is the curriculum, like everything fits into the Brainy model. And we didn't design it like with knowledge. It just kind of ended up being something open. But like you can think here about like Twitter thing, like you can post any content to Twitter, even that there is a limited form. So it's a very open platform, and it could have been designed in a very different way.
Truly. So one more thing towards that. Because I'm wondering, I know that there's a lot of contributors to your platform locally that are extending it and making it more adjusted to the local needs. But I wonder whether you had any of your own team members initially involved in this expansion process also abroad, like were you hiring any people like in the local environments that will helping you out with those expansion and also like understanding better of those local markets? Yeah,
and in fact, for a very long time, our strategy was that we were hiring people who had the right skill set and came from the markets that we were entering, but we wanted them to be in Krakow in our office. And we are quite successful with that. I think to the limitation that it worked very well for countries east and south from Poland. And that's why we managed to build that central markets team. But definitely when we thought about entering Indonesia, let's say, we needed somebody who went through the educational system there, who understands the background, who can give us that basic knowledge to the company, the beginning package, because then we learn a lot about all of the details, how to operate in the market. But at the beginning, you just need a basic download just to make sure that you don't make some obvious mistakes. And like we did that by hiring somebody from the local market, having the role in Krakow, so expecting people to move to Krakow, which created this very cool environment in our office of a number of nationalities, people working together. It was a very cool experience, especially because that kind of goes back to the days where Poland was significantly less diverse. It's still not that diverse, but it used to be like very little diverse. It was so hard to hire international talent who was in Krakow. Yeah? But fortunately, Krakow is a great place, and you can convince people to move there. And I bet there's a lot of locations where you wouldn't be able to convince anybody to move there. So I think that's part of the reason why we could build this global platform with operation centralized in Krakow.
Yes, I also believe that Krakow is one of the advantages and to that success, but probably, as you mentioned, like this problem and vision were probably the main driving factors. Okay, so like you've mentioned like really defined problem as the first success factor, great team, and also the network effect, right? So which ones of those you think you could use if you were to establish the next business of yours as the, let's say, will those three pillars be very the same? Like, do you think that other businesses here could use this as some kind of guide and universal playbook, or again, you think that it's more something you build just for Brainly, and everyone has to come with their own recipe?
That's a good question, because I haven't really thought about it. Because I'm not
like I'm asking some
like
of the questions.
I don't think about the next business I'm going to create at all. So, but yeah, I think it's quite universal. That said, like, just thinking about it right now, I think the network effect is a great advantage, but it's not necessary, because you can always use marketing spend to cover on that network effect. But that brings other challenges to, like, ultimately at one day when you IPO, what investors care about is to big extent your P&L, and the numbers need to work. And if you have to spend a lot of money on marketing, that makes the model less efficient. But you can make it work, definitely. Yeah. But I think without a clear definition of the problem that you're trying to solve, and without the team, like, you are not able to go anywhere, right? Network effect is something unique to us, and I bet, like, to other businesses, it could be like there could be other things that you can find that are that foundation. But the problem definition and the team are things that are universal.
Okay, and were there any other, like, breakthrough moments or factors that change the trajectory of your growth? Like, can you mention some, I don't know, investments or, like, I don't know, some like key hire or whatever that help you really escalate the growth? Like, were there any breakthrough moments on this whole journey that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think that's like, entering the first market outside of Poland was very, very interesting, because it brought back the memory of starting something from the beginning. Yeah? And I think that's like that's the feeling that I like to have whenever we launch a new thing. And that was definitely very important from the approach to new things perspective. So to look for this new opening in everything that you are doing, and then you can focus on the big things that you will be doing, not only on optimizations. Optimizations are important, but that feeling of like making a big difference to your business was and continues to be very, very, very important. Especially that I remember the first days when we launched in Russia, like, the numbers didn't look great. And I remember having a discussion with Andriy, who was, the person responsible for the Russian market for us. And he said, like, no, come on, it's going to work. And then 2 weeks later, the numbers started picking up, and it was like, okay, he was right. I was worrying too much. Yeah. So I think, like, that was a very great learning moment to me, that, like, launch of a new market. Then I think second thing, it's also related to entering a new market, but like, entering the US was to be extent a game changer, because it opened up our minds to, like, sky is the limit. It sounds a bit like a cliche, but I think, like, going to the US, raising money there, and that entire experience, then moving there, opening the office, it was it was really, really cool for again, thinking big and thinking, like, how you build something huge, not just how you think something nice. Yeah. So it kind of set the mindset of myself, but also the company, on winning, not on participating. Yeah. Which is kind of this thing that I sometimes I tend to repeat. Yeah. Like, we are here to win, not to participate. And I think that sets the tone of our ambition. And more recently,
I really like that.
And more recently, I think there was that moment when we had to make a strategic decision, if we, like, what's the path to commercialization? Because you can employ this very salesy driven model of thinking about the output metric, how much sales do you make, but at some point, we decided that a better model for us is to focus on building something exciting, something that delivers value, and numbers will come. So consider revenue numbers just as an output, not as the reason for us to be here. Because when you build something, you feel students and parents are using it, and that it gives a lot of value. You can always find a way to commercialize it. Yeah? So remove that pressure from delivering on the numbers and increase the pressure on building great things. Like helped us a lot in the last 2 years in accelerating the growth of the business, because definitely like last 2 years were very, very good for us.
So can you tell us, because you've mentioned initially that you're based on a freemium model. So what's the monetization model behind it? Like, how are you, making the revenue on top of the current network that you've built?
Yeah. So we are monetizing in the US, and US is like, in the US we have about 30 million monthly users. So that's about, I don't know, equals to about 50% of the students population in the US is using us at least once a month. So that's quite a market penetration. But again, like we have more than 300 million users globally. In the US, just 30, and that's the only market where we are monetizing right now. And the model is like similar to Spotify's. So there is a free version that you can sign up for, and it gives you a lot of value, but has some limitations. And then there is a paid version where like there is no limitations to what you can use. And that also defines that because there is a free version, there is also an advertising business around that free version. So paid version is a subscription business, free version is an advertising business, and a mechanism to convert people to the paid version. So that's how the business model works. But again, it's just in the US. It may evolve to a slightly different form in other countries, because in the US it's a very deep market from advertising perspective, so you can build a big advertising business out there. In other countries, that's going to be definitely a challenge. So that model is going to evolve, but I think the core is going to stay the same.
Okay, so it was definitely worth entering into the US market from what I see. So congrats on that. And which country was that in terms of like the ones that you have selected, like the US, like when you were ready to launch on that market in terms of like?
So I don't remember which market it was, but we definitely had our eyes on it from early days. We even at some point, it was, I don't know, 2010 or something, we created like a mock-up of English US website, but when I've checked the quality of our execution and we ran some initial tests, we are just like, okay, we are not ready to do that. So we entered the US in 2015, if I remember correctly. So that was one of our like most recent markets to enter.
What was it related in any way to getting those financial rounds of yours, or so like acquiring investments? And
sorry, I just need to deal with that noise behind me. Definitely, because as I mentioned, we had our eyes on the US, but we also quite well understood that to even try to play there, like you need a lot of capital. And we raised our Series seed round. I think that was $500,000, and we just didn't feel you can do a lot with that in such an expensive market as the US. But then when we started raising our Series A, the initial plan was also like not to start there yet, like aggressively, but because the fundraising was quite successful and we raised more money than we were planning at the beginning of the process, like that kind of opened up our eyes on that opportunity. So definitely like capital was critical to even start thinking about it. I'm not sure if that was the correct thesis. Maybe we could have done it earlier. And maybe it was just a bit us being a bit shy about such a big opportunity. But that was like the the decision-making framework.
Yes, definitely. So can you tell us, because I believe that this is something that majority of our community are interested in, because you are probably the only ones having the Series D like behind you. So can you tell us a bit more about this process of acquiring those funds, and also some, I don't know, importance milestones you had to achieve in order to get them, and some, I don't know, key aspects of each of those investments, and whether it was good to go as far as Series D or not, like what, and also like what you had to do probably after each round to fulfill also the, you know, expectations of your investors, and also your bold visions behind it. A lot of questions.
So yeah, but regarding the fundraising processes, like in our history, there were two types of fundraising processes: the ones that were like extremely successful, and the ones that were extremely painful. So in one case you raise because you want to build; in other case you raise because you want to survive. And you know, like, and I think that you know which one it's going to be, like 1 or 2 weeks after starting to reach out to potential investors, because when you see that initial feedback, you can just feel if that's going to be that painful one or that very exciting one. But you know, from process perspective, I think it's the same. And to be honest, I don't think we are the best organized to give advice on that, because I spoke to other founders in Krakow, and you know, they run these CRMs where they send periodically some updates to potential investors. I don't really do that, and I wish I was organized enough to do that.
So it seems not unnecessary.
No, like you know, I think that really depends on the founder and on the character. But you know, like you build your case, you build then the deck on top of that case that tells about the business. You start reaching out to investors. Then the process is quite standard: a couple of calls. Initial one is just to see if the opportunity is interesting, then some data exchange. So the process, I think there is a lot of information on that through the term sheet to the closing, and some key points to negotiate. But like here, I think what's important to focus is that there are these painful fundraisings, and I think then it's very important to find somebody who is going to believe in the business, even if the business struggles. Yeah? To find somebody who is exactly on the same page on the strategy, and is going to help you like to reaccelerate the growth. Yeah? And when you have the like very successful fundraising process, like you will have to do a different approach, because then like you receive so many calls that you cannot really deal with the proactive outreach. And then like you have to think kind of the same, but it's a different thinking, because in the tough fundraising, you have to really find the right person. In the second one, you have to like by elimination choose who you would like to work with from people that are interested, because you cannot do a lot of that outreach work on your own just because of time limitation. Yeah? Yeah, and we went from ups and downs, and I think that's another lesson that every business goes through that. Yeah, I think I answered part of your question, yes. Not the entire one, but yeah, two types of fundraising. Process is quite standard. Decision making is kind of different. The amazing ones like feel awesome, but they have their own risks of inflating the company too much, or like too much money is also not good for, especially for an early stage business. The tough fundraisings are a threat to your existence, so that's a totally different set of risks.
Exactly. So do you see any drawbacks of those investments, like or also like, let's say, maybe to give some advice to other founders, like what let's say factors their business has to meet in order to be ready for like large scale investments? Because this is also something that I see from some companies that, as you mentioned, like the big money also bring some risks related to how to well spend them, and also like, you know, how to arrange the whole process afterwards, right? Because this is like a massive amount of cash that flows in, and the company has to be ready in some sense to well spend it, right? So how you were arranging that process, and maybe you would do something differently these days if you were to do it again, if you could share that.
Yeah, so I think that all comes to the strategy that you have. And I've seen some businesses that were trying to raise money on the VC market, but it felt like, hey, you should bootstrap that. Like, you don't really have to raise that cash. Yeah? In our case, the situation was quite clear. We wanted to go international, but we felt we cannot focus both on internationalization and on revenue. So then you have to pay your bills somehow, and the only way to finance that is via the diluting your shareholding, bringing new investors, and using that cash to finance growth. So in our case, it was a very obvious situation. You cannot grow if you cannot raise capital, or you know, there are other companies that expand via M&A. And that also requires cash, so that means you need investors to jump on board. Second thing is also that I think there are some challenges where you are very excited about solving the problem, and for us that was internationalization, but you don't have a lot of knowledge about how to do this. So for example, the investment that we got from Point 9 Capital was very important. Because it helped us to understand the international market significantly better. Like I've been outside of Poland just a few times at the time of that investment, so I definitely knew little about it. So yeah, I would connect all of that to the strategy, and based on the strategy, you make the decision. Like, can you finance it on your own? If yes, you probably don't need an investment, but maybe you lack some knowledge that the investors can bring to the table. So then even if you don't need money, you may look at the investment to be able to expand the business further. Yeah? But there are some strategies that just by default require investors' money, because otherwise the strategy wouldn't be a viable model. And I don't know, like from doing things differently, like there's always like a number of things that you can optimize in any decision that you make, but not really, like nothing really big, I would say. Like it was a cautious decision. We wanted to go international, so we felt we need that cash, and you know, so there is not like, there was never really a feeling that, oh, we could have taken a different path, because then I think we would build a business in Poland, which would be a great business as for Poland, but we wanted really to go outside and to build something global. So not really, like, not any concerns.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Michał. I think that, you know, even though you're an expert in Q&A, I think you still need some, let's say, time for a short break. So so what we will do now is there's like a very brief breakout rooms where we will, you know, connect you in a smaller room so that you can also have some face-to-face time with other founders and you know, learn a bit more about each other. And then we will come back with another session of Q&A to Michał. But this time, I hope you know, we will engage also some of you to those questions, so that you can also have a chance to interact with Michał and hear those